If 9/11 was the death of American morality, January 6th was the death of American truth. At first glance, it feels disrespectful to make that comparison at all. The death tolls are just too different, but the similarities are also too stark to ignore. We'll start with page 204 and why it says C.V. Harding, page 173. Before I read you these quotes, I should note that it is a bit hasty to say that 9/11 was the death of American morality. It would be more precise to say that America's reaction to 9/11 led to the death of American moral leadership from the perspective of the international community. After Guantanamo Bay, we ought to add a 28th Amendment that says we hold these truths to be self-evident unless it is inconvenient for us. Drone strikes on civilian targets, drone strikes on American citizens, violations of habeas corpus, so-called enhanced interrogation tactics, aka torture. Post 9/11 America is not a moral leader. It is guilty of war crimes. I scribbled see page 173 in the margins because Verity Harding is not American. She has an international perspective, an outsiders across the pond perspective in her book AI Needs You. And she tells us what America looked like from across the pond, which is that after 9/11, we were openly willing to admit that we were abandoning our commitment to human rights. Now, to be sure, America has a history of many human rights abuses, but we did it clandestinely and under cover of darkness. Post 9/11, we were openly willing to admit these things to the world. An open abandonment of the rule of law was tantamount to America's abdication of its moral authority on the international stage. But it wasn't just suspected threats. It wasn't just people that the U.S. suspected to be threats whose rights we were violating. The Patriot Act gave broad, sweeping legal authority for the government to violate the rights of all American citizens. The government didn't just start shooting x-rays through our bags at airports. They started collecting data about every American's everyday life. And as nice as it would be to just point the finger squarely at George Bush on this one, Obama absolutely continued to use these mechanisms long into his presidency. Part of what has been irritating me slightly through this entire election cycle is people continuing to say, democracy's at stake, democracy's at stake. It frickin' is. But to a degree, it is naive to look at the last 4 years as the only years in which democracy was at stake. Democracy has been eroding since the day the ink dried on the Patriot Act.